All right, guys, welcome to episode number 6 of the podcast. I am here with JT Marino. He is the co-founder of Tuft Needle, and that is a company that was founded in 2012 and literally turned the mattress business upside down by taking it from what it used to be a tedious experience to a one-click online experience. JT and his co-founder grew Tuft Needle to $200 million in revenue. And in 2018, they merged with the biggest mattress company in the world, Serta Simmons. JT, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. I'm so happy that first of all, you're here. You're a legend, guys. I'm so excited to dive into JT's story. And why I wanted to dive into your story is because, dude, you are doing it. Like you took that entrepreneurial leap. You had the courage to do that with your co-founder, and dude, look where it led you, right? Like almost 10 years later, like you guys disrupted a whole industry, right? And you created massive amounts of freedom and joy for yourself and for the people that work for you. So I want to dive a little bit into your story so we can show other people what is possible when they decide to jump and go for it.
Sure. Well, my background, so I studied computer science and mathematics in college, and that was at Penn State. And I ended up in Silicon Valley right after leaving school. And I built a little, I would say, a niche for myself to help founders who didn't have a technical co-founder or like a CTO who had a concept or an idea to help them essentially carve out what their MVP is and develop their product, hire and build their engineering and design team, and launch their company. And so I had done this for about a dozen different businesses for a few years. And my last one that I was at, I was the director of engineering. And typically I was a contractor, hired gun for a period of time, but this one I was actual employee of. And my best friend, Dehi Park, from college, and later my co-founder of Tuft Needle, he actually had joined us at this startup in Silicon Valley. And we got to the point where we had just decided that we've helped enough entrepreneurs get started that we were really ready to start something of our own. And the way that we approached figuring out what it was we were going to do, well, I would say that one of the things that I learned after moving to Silicon Valley and just seeing all the different startups, and I mean there are thousands of startups, and I would say, to be perfectly honest, most of them are kind of junky. That they don't really solve problems that are maybe as needed, or it's very incremental. But looking at really the difference between the majority of the startups versus the ones that really break through and are huge innovators, and it's the ones we hear about. What I found was those companies that break through were spurred on from a problem, a very specific problem. And I would say a lot of them that I remember anyway were problems that the founders or one of the founders had specifically. So knowing that, we wanted to take a very methodical approach to deciding what it was we were going to do. We wanted to be very considered. So we set we wrote down a list of guidelines. And the first guideline was we have to solve a real problem. And the second guideline was no investors. So we both on our own independent paths before coming together at the startup we were at the time, before TNN, had a lot of experience at funded startups, and we both had shared and commiserated with some of the elements and cons that come along with raising capital and having very active investors. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It just was a path we decided for Tuft Needle we did not want to take. So that was our second goal. Another one was we wanted to build a culture that we could work at for the rest of our lives. So something that we could retire with, we didn't want to have an exit strategy. So, and there's a number of others. So that's really how we framed up um, our guiding principles before we nailed down what it was we were going to do, which was mattresses. But I'll get to that. So we took a few weeks, and it was a little slow at first, but we both were just writing in our journals, just every problem and everything that had been annoying in our lives. And when we came back together after a couple of weeks, we compared our lists. And it's funny because you'd expect that most of it would have been related to technology and software, because that was really our competency. But we actually had a number of ideas that were not software related, but potentially could benefit from the software experience and software product experience that we had in the past. And so one of the items on our list was shopping for mattresses. And in a weird way, it was very eccentric because it was so boring and like left field and unsexy and unlike something you would typically think a tech entrepreneur would write down on a list.
I would love for you to dive into your story about how you came to that.
Yeah. So okay. So that problem was on my list, and it came from a very emotional experience I had. I had gotten married, went shopping for a mattress. I never bought a mattress actually, because when I was a kid, obviously my parents had one for me. And when I went to college, the apartment I was living at, it was provided for. And right after college, I got married, and then we obviously needed to buy a mattress because we were going to get our own place. And the work that I do is primarily intellectual, and I've seen a strong correlation in how well I sleep to my mental performance and my problem solving abilities when I'm coding or designing. And so I'm viewing this as like a big step outside of college. I need to invest in the best mattress possible, invest in my sleep, invest in my health and wellness, because I now have a family to, a spouse to provide for. And, it's just like, I don't think this is like that out of the ordinary. So I started shopping, and I'm going to sum this up really quick because it can be a very long story. I started shopping online. What are the makes? What are the models? What's the memory speed? What's the hard drive space? What's the screen resolution? I'm looking for like the specifications of mattresses and how to compare and contrast like I would a computer. And to my surprise, but then later, I now understand why, but there are no specs that you can't measure like the pressure relieving score of one mattress compared to another. It was also difficult to understand like firm, soft, medium, like what I like. I have no idea. I don't know. I don't even know what the mattress I'm sleeping on is. Like I need someone to say, here's a very soft mattress, lay on that. Okay, now lay on yours. And then I'd probably be able to tell what it was. So it's a difficult thing to do. And I was frustrated because most of what I was reading online seemed to be salesy and gimmicky. And, now if like most of like the reviews and all that you read are just affiliate marketers who are getting kickbacks for the mattresses they sell. So obviously there's incentives to sell the mattresses and rate the mattresses that pay you the best. But anyway, so that was frustrating. So I went into a store, and it was like jumping back in time in the 80s, which I was born in the 80s, but it seems like what I would imagine the 80s would have been like old stores or department stores, like just a big box with like posters tacked to the wall, mattresses just laid out, nothing special, nothing fancy. Like go to an Apple store and then walk to a mattress store and like tell me that's not like a stark contrast.
Kind of eerie, right?
It's weird. It's super weird. And then you have a salesperson who doesn't seem to like their job, and they're like hanging on the fact that you may be buying a mattress and they get that commission. And it's like, one of the questions I was asked is, do you like firm, soft, whatever? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know what I like, and I don't know what she likes. Like, what if it's different? And so you like lay on like 5, 6 different mattresses. Okay. By the time you get to the 6th mattress, you forget what the first one's like. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to like this if I take it home. And so it was frustrating. I ended up leaving, which, the salesperson literally stood behind our car and said, please, it's like, I'll pay your sales tax for you. And it's like, I need to think about it. They're trying to close the deal. I went to another store, and I told them there was a brand I was looking at. And I said, do you have this brand and this particular model? And they're like, I said, do you have this particular model? And they're like, no, we don't have that model. I'm like, yes, you do. You carry the brand. And they're like, no, but we have our own models. And I'm like, oh, I see the game here. Like each store has their own model, so you can't compare and contrast. So I ended up going to one of the only brand that I was consistent from store to store. and very expensive and doesn't run discounts. So I felt like at least I have some anchor to reality that's consistent between each store that I'm looking at. And there's like 12 mattresses in the sale. And I'm like, okay, well, which one do you recommend? And they're like, that one down there is the cheapest and that's the least comfortable. And that one up there is the most expensive. That's the most comfortable. So it's literally designed to maximize your budget. So anyways, I ended up buying one. It took, I had to take off work two days. Like the delivery company missed the day. It took like 6 weeks to get it. And then that day I took off work. And remember, I just started a job just out of college. So that's not a good look. And then they missed the delivery, so I had to take off another day. And then we get it, we didn't like it, we tried to return it, and then we had to have an inspector out to see if there were stains or like divots. And it's like, I just bought this. You have to have a stranger come in and look at one of the most intimate objects, products that you have in your house. And then there's a restocking fee and a shipping back, and then you only get a credit. It's like, forget it. So and so every night I was reminded of this mistake I made. I blew about $3,500 on this product that we didn't like, and I've just felt like totally taken advantage of. I had a pit in my stomach because I used a lot of the money that we had gotten for our wedding as gifts. So anyways, that's how it ended up on the list, and so we kept going back to it because Dehi had a similar experience. So anyway, so Dehi and I think that a lot of people view entrepreneurs as big risk takers, but I don't agree with that. I don't view myself as necessarily a big risk taker. I like to, test and learn. And so what we did was, and inspired by the 4-hour work week, we decided to develop a test for this concept and rapidly develop it. So that was my background anyway. So we did something we called the hate list. So we took a legal pad, we wrote the hate list at the top and listed out everything we could think of that we hate about shopping for mattresses and everything we hate about the product of mattresses. And like as an example, salespeople, and then we drew line on the center, what would we do instead? No salespeople. Dozens of mattresses, or it's too many models. What about one model? You have to go to a store. You don't have to go to a store. So like difficulty returning the product, free returns, like for a period of time in the trial. Like you get all your money back, and we'll take this mattress and figure out what to do with it. We didn't know at the time, but now we do. So that's how we framed up the features or the benefits that the customer would be getting based off of like what we would, if we waved a magic wand, want for ourselves. So we then reduced that list of features to the least that we felt we would need to do, minimally, to one, encourage a customer to buy a mattress, sight unseen, and two, for a customer to buy from a company they've never heard of. So we shortened the list, and then we expanded those items to a sales page, just a marketing page, like a website, simple one-page website. We had a photo stock image of a mattress at the top. It wasn't our product, but it was just a photo stock image. And we converted those features into like a really nice product page. And then at the bottom, we had a credit card form that you can type your credit card information in, and it would authorize but not capture. But either way, I mean, I'm a big fan of testing the your market viability by having a stranger give you money, because that is a form of rewarding you for solving a problem, or at least the perception that you solved a problem, right? So we didn't want to ask, friends and family. We wanted a stranger to attempt it. So I'm sitting, I'm in Palo Alto. Dehi's not with me. I'm sitting at my computer. I'm sitting in Coupa Cafe. It's 8:00 at night. It's like buzzing. If you've ever been in this cafe, like there's no electrical outlets, and that's what they use to kind of kick people out when their batteries die. And it's packed. And I'm sitting at this little, if you're looking at Coupa Cafe, the window to the right, that's where I was sitting. So I'm sitting at this table at the window, my friend's across from me. And I launched the website, and I send a text to Dehi, and I'm like, okay, the site's up. Then I get a text from him. He's like, okay, the ad is up. So he took out an ad online. 15 minutes later, my phone was ringing, and I answered it. He's screaming over the phone. I can't really understand what he's saying. I'm like, slow down. I'm like, what's wrong? And he goes, dude, we just made a sale. And I literally did something I've never done before, and I've never done since, but I stood up out of my chair so fast that like the back of my knees hit the chair, and it like slid behind me. And I put my arms in the air and I yelled, jackpot, like super loud. And I was like frozen in like shock. And my eyes opened and my mouth opened, and I was like looking around the room in like the cafe froze. And I'm like looking around, and people are looking at me, and there was a couple people like nodding like this, almost like they knew exactly what had happened in that moment. But that was in June of 2012, and that was us testing this concept of cutting out the middleman, simplifying the process, creating a perception of a really developed and great product. And so we had validated that was enough for us. So that's when we left our jobs. And then from June of 2012, and then across summer to October is when we figured out how the supply chain works. And it's very different going from software, something that you can iterate and develop and launch and deploy many times per day, which is what I'm used to iterating and prototyping over the period of a couple months or a few months, and then having a product that you get feedback very slowly from. So we took the summer to figure that out, which was a challenge in and of itself. And then we officially launched Tuft Needle in October of 2012. And something that's a little unique is that we bootstrapped. So we didn't want, bootstrapping means not having any investors. We started with $6,000, which I think is fairly reasonable for people who might want to take the leap. And to be fair, we also both had savings. So we were living off savings over the summer. And we cut our bills. Both Dahi did and I did. We both had to, I was in Palo Alto, so and he has a couple kids, so we both had our own burdens. We cut our bills, and my wife got a second job. We did do a couple little contract work over the summer to kind of help out a little bit. And then we launched in October, and we essentially had 4 months before we were both like bone dry. And no, I don't normally tell this part of the story, but we did line up contracts to consult a company that we both are familiar with, just in case. But we were hoping not. And I will say also, we took the approach, we talk about this a lot, and we did this when we started the business, and we've done it ever since in a number of ways, but we talk about burning the boats. There's only one way to go, and it can be scary, but that's why we did the test, is to reduce some of this fear. But we wanted to quit our jobs, so there's no way to go other than forward. And it also freed up our mind share. I was thinking about the startup all day and night, and I had plenty of time, no excuse. And that, I think, was really liberating. And it's what my brother is working on his startup, and it's what I encouraged him to do as well. So, but anyway, so we burned the boats. October 2012, we launch, and hold on one second. Okay, so we launched I have a alarm I have to turn off really quick. So we launched the company, and in about 2 months' time, we were making enough sales to hit this like level I've heard called ramen profitable, where you make just enough money that you can eat and survive off of ramen noodles. So we hit ramen profitability before the end of the year. And that was really the start. And I mean, honestly, as little as we were paying ourselves, it was liberating knowing that we were financially independent and have a little bit of financial freedom. And now we have time. So, that contract that we were lining up, we didn't end up needing it. And we were able to just sort of work full time on this little startup that we had both worked on. So anyway, that was, I'll stop there because I could just keep going. But so yeah, that's really just in a nutshell, the way that we got started and early on without getting a little too tactical.
Dude, I love this story. You're so good at telling this story too. I love the fact that, hey, first, you guys set this criteria for what you guys wanted to create, and then that kind of focused you. And when you had this awful mattress experience, you were like, okay, like this might be it. Tim Ferriss was a huge inspiration, especially before I work with. So I'm very familiar with the framework that he utilized to grow his supplement company, and I love that you also utilize the same thing to test if this was a viable idea. Now, before Tuft Needle and before this first purchase of this product that did not exist at the time, had anybody ever purchased a mattress on the internet, on sight unseen?
Yes. So actually, in the late 90s, mattresses were being sold online. And I would say before that, there were catalogs. People would buy mattresses all the way back to, I think, Sears, the early days with Sears. I mean, people would buy houses from magazines through Sears. Um, so yes, mattresses were bought online, but the real difference for us was, well, first we had one. And we believed, and I think that there's this, well, there's this idea of like the naive mindset or the student's mindset. So in the mattress industry, and there's a mattress industry, trust me, it's super weird. There's this idea that everybody has a different firmness they need. And we had this idea that maybe that's not true. Maybe there's a way that you can, maybe there's a firmness everybody would like, or maybe there are other variables you can tweak in the product beyond firmness that we could figure out the 80-20. And as we were starting and when we've had our manufacturer, they're like, you're dead. This isn't going to work. It's going to fail. Like, it doesn't work. And so when we first started, we started with, so the approach of like release early, release often, and get the product out. So we developed a product that we felt was good enough. We launched it and then immediately started calling every single customer to get feedback. And it wasn't so much the good feedback we wanted. It's like, and sometimes I feel like as an entrepreneur, you don't want to hear when something's bad because it's, it's, for me, it's like, it's emotional, it hurts, but that's the stuff you really need. That's the goal. Those are the gems. What sucks about your product? What isn't good? And using that feedback to then drive and iterate. So our return rate was about 20, almost 25%, almost 1 out of 4 mattresses we sent out was returned in the very beginning. The industry average is about 15%. So we're worse than the industry average. At about the 6-month mark, we got it from about 25-ish% down to 15. And 6 months later, we got it down to 10. Today, it's below 4%, which is the lowest in the industry, because what we do is we're not releasing new mattresses, we're iterating and making improvements over time based on feedback.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about that because I know when you guys first started, you guys launched one product. And I see so many entrepreneurs when they first get into business, they try to launch so many things, but you look at the quality of so many of all of these different projects, and it's not that great. But you guys decided to launch one product and decided to iterate on this one product for a long period of time. Can you talk a little bit about that decision and your thinking behind just sticking to one thing and putting all of your energy behind that one thing and how that allowed you guys to grow and scale Tuft
Yeah.
Needle?
Yeah, so it's easy to start with a lot in the beginning because you don't depend on a lot of process and a lot of people, especially when your team grows. You have to, whether you like it or not, you have to add process management. With a physical, tangible good, it's beyond, like, we have software developers and designers and industrial design. So there's like the typical process of a tech company, but we also have a physical good. So there's also supply chain and POs and inventory. So in the beginning, you don't have a lot of people, you don't have a lot of process. And so it's really easy to just tack on more products or more features. And that really becomes a friction point as you scale. So I've seen that in the past. So I just wanted to keep it very simple until we, and honestly, like, if you have growth and it's growing fast and you don't see a point at which it's going to slow down and you're going to round out on the S curve, like, why would you divert your energy away? And then when you start to see that there's an opportunity, your market is maybe drying up for your product and you see an opportunity to launch a new one, to tap into a new one, like, why not drive and capture that market as fast as possible? Also, by having one product, you can be laser focused on just iterating and making it the best one. In the, like, sub market, like, for our price point range is you can view a market within a price point band. You can view a market within a set of features for a product, and or maybe where people are buying. But the way that where we were selling our product, and the way, in the particular products people were comparing and contrasting to, we were able to crush our competition's products because they were spread so thin across everything they were doing, and so we were able to perfect it. So that was, and to go back to your original question, that was what was really unique about Tuft Needle. We had this one product. We iterated on customer feedback, the policies, the policies like the warranty, the trial. That's a product. The customer service. That's a product. Our website is a product. The way it's delivered, the way you open it. So it's not just the product, it's everything that wraps it, the full experience. So cutting out the middlemen, so we're able to cut out all those margins that you typically have from discounts and retailers and all of that, simplifying to one single product, having a free trial, warranty, all of these things were sort of a first. So there were a couple of those that some companies had, but not all packaged together into like a new age mattress company. And so we figured out the formula that worked to sort of engage customers to buy. And what was really inspiring, I mean, at first it wasn't inspiring, but really in hindsight, really cool to see is we grew enough and got enough attention that it spurred and created a market for venture capital. So we didn't raise money, but then venture capital decided to play in the space and found all these other entrepreneurs, a lot of them from the mattress industry, some of them not. And you see this massive wave of new emerging companies that were mirroring and learning from the model that we had figured out, which I am very proud of being a part of. And I no longer view them as competition. I view them as essentially other companies we were collaborating with to disrupt. But we catalyzed it for sure.
So I want to talk a little bit about your competition, and I'm so happy that you brought them up because a lot of them they saw what you guys were doing, they saw that it was a viable business model, and they essentially started to copy a lot of the stuff that you guys were pioneering. And some of them like raised tons of money, like $500 million in VC capital, right? And one of the things that I understand that really sets you apart and that allowed you to grow and continue your growth rate without taking on any capital while these other companies were taking capital was the fact that you guys really focused on creating a strong brand with the people that you serve. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I've been asked like what was the magic or like the silver bullet, and there definitely wasn't. It was like a sum of all things. And one of the things that we are huge fans of is the Net Promoter System. It's a Net Promoter Score. It's a way of measuring customer feedback. And our goal was to hit the level of Apple and Amazon and USAA Bank, like mid 70s, which is very high. Because it's a metric, it's one way of measuring, and every way of measurement always has its flaws, but it's good enough. It's good enough for us that we were able to figure out what we needed to do next, and that was really the feed for what was in our product roadmap and our service, and everything we were doing was really driven by this survey of our customers. And so I would really attribute that practice that we started in the beginning of this feedback loop. And then as we hired people and the company grew, it was something that was adopted, and it's just it's innately woven through the entire company of Tuft Needle. And that was something that was really unique because it was sort of self-fulfilling. By delighting and making your experience better, delighting the customer, it then helped us grow faster, more organically, which also helped us reduce our cost of advertising. And so when a competitor comes in with a lot of money, they don't need to necessarily focus so much on the product. They can really buy their customers, which is a good, I mean, it's not a practice, it's not a method I would want, but you can buy your customers. And really at the end of the day, whoever markets the best usually wins. You think the best product wins, but that's not my experience. The best companies got both. So we had to be very methodical about never dropping the ball in the experience of the customer and building almost a cult-like following from our customer base, which is something our competitors never had. And that was also one of the key effects for reducing our cost of advertising, because we had so many people referring and also validating. Somebody was thinking about our product, they talked to somebody and that person said, oh, I have one, it's great. Don't even think about it, just buy it. So that was important. I think also an important factor of bootstrapping was we had to be profitable. So everything we did had to work. So we wouldn't necessarily go do subway takeovers in New York City. We thought we had to do that because our competition started doing those types of things, but we just couldn't afford it. We couldn't justify those expenses and weren't sure we were able to attribute those sales and those profits if they were to sales to see if they were profitable. So we really focused on the ways of advertising that worked and we knew was profitable, which is something our competition didn't really do. So we were really building a good business. It may not be valued like a competitor, but we didn't have an intention to exit to like a public market or to raise capital. So we were really measuring our level of success very differently. Our first major look-alike, I wouldn't say copycat. There's definitely been some copy, exact copy with advertising and all of that. And we just didn't want to play the legal battle because that was a distraction, it would have been a distraction. But I, in hindsight, really value and appreciate our competition for raising all that money because they spent so much money in advertising that drove awareness. You can buy a mattress from a modern day company that's making a great product, and then it helps create awareness for all the other companies in the space. And so it essentially accelerated our growth, and we didn't have to spend as much on marketing. So I would say that I used to say one of our competitors, for every dollar they spend, 20 cents is ours. So I now very much value and appreciate and I very much appreciate having competition when we did.
I love that. Can you share one or two things that you guys implemented when it came to creating that wow experience of creating that cult-like following that really work within your company?
Oh, that's a really good question. Let me think about that. I think initially, which is more of a wow early in our first 5 years or so, was the fact that we wouldn't ask questions when somebody would decide to do a return. We actually would send an email before their trial was up. So we started with 30 days trial, free trial, first mattress company to do it. Then when our first competitor launched, they did 45. So then we matched it, and then they did 100. So then we did 100, and then now that seems to be like the standard. But when a customer was getting close to their trial, we would send an automatic email saying, "Hey, your trial's almost up. Are you sure? Do you love your mattress?" And if you responded and you didn't, we'd encourage you to return it.
Wow.
And so that was something that, from a profit standpoint, seems like a step backwards. But think of it this way: if there's a problem with your product, let's say there's a problem with your product and they're returning it because of you get to, in order to do the return, they have to make contact and you can ask some questions. And then that immediately went into this feedback loop. And in a perfect world, all this feedback, you'd be able to resolve it and essentially reduce those returns. And so that was really also a way of building trust with our customers, because what company reminds you of your trial? They don't want you to remember, so you pass your trial.
Never
right?
heard of any company doing that.
And we still do it. Because it's economical and it's also a gesture that we trust them. I think that's a wow. Another, and this is broad and not very specific, but whenever we would do something that we would see was a step backwards on our principles as a company, we would change our mind back to where we were. We'd apologize for it. And it reminds me of Domino's, when Domino's was under scrutiny for their ingredients, and they put out the billboards and said, "Give us another try. We've updated our ingredients." It's we're sorry, you're right, and now give us a try. We fixed it. These opportunities to apologize, not just customer to customer, but also in mass, is something that humanizes your company. And it's not so much humanizing just for your customer, which helps create a bond with your brand, but it also humanizes it with your employees, and it drives a passion, because who doesn't want to work at a company that really cares about their customer and is willing to take these steps? So it also was really sort of self-manifesting. What's really interesting about Tuft Needle's brand, we didn't know anything about brand. We learned it on the job. But we were determined to learn as much as we could about what brand really is, how you do it. Same thing with culture. We saw this symbiotic relationship between culture and brand. When you make decisions as leaders and founders and behave a certain way, and you also are curating people that share a certain set of values that resonates with your brand, and you start to see it permeates the aura that's sort of almost difficult to measure or touch, but that people feel from the brand. So because our external brand very closely mirrors the internal culture, and they sort of feed on each other together. So I think that this idea of being very authentic and apologizing, and also making decisions that are really in the best interest of the customer sometimes, and not always the best decision for profit, was something that was really unique to us as well.
Awesome. I love those. Thank you for sharing those. I think in entrepreneurship, when you hear stories like the one that you're sharing right now of you bootstrapping this company, all the success that you guys have had, it sounds like it was all sunshine and rainbows, right? I'd love for you, if you're open to it, I'd love for you to share some sacrifices that you had to make along the way to be able to bring Tuft Needle to the company that it is today.
Well, I would say the first big one, once we started, I'm skipping over figuring out the supply chain because that was a nightmare. The first year, the first full year, so end of 2012 and most of 2013, I would say we were in something that, I've heard called, we call it the pit of sorrow. So when we launched in October 2012, after a few weeks, and we were very lucky, we started getting sales. And with a high ticket item like a mattress, you don't need to make that many sales to really become ramen profitable. You need to make enough. You definitely need to sell it quite a bit. You need to figure out your marketing and your product model. But once you get there, we got there within a couple months, and we would have some days we'd sell zero, some days we'd sell three, some seven, some five, some 12, some zero, zero, zero. And it was really difficult to see a pattern. The computer scientist in me is like, I'm looking like, how can I plot this in linear and put it on a linear regression line? Are we growing? Is this working? And so also that was coalesced with the fact that we were just cash poor. So we didn't have a lot of money to spend. So it was just like really, really scrappy. And so there was a lot of time really perfecting and polishing, which I don't necessarily advocate for, our product and our supply chain and software, and but also our marketing. We were trying every guerrilla tactic we could think of, and really in hindsight, there's a lot of hindsights now in this stage as a founder. I see that there was growth, but you couldn't see the area under the graph. It's like we saw the top of the chart. We couldn't see the area. And so we were growing. And there were times where we were close to calling it, like not shutting it down, but all right, this isn't working like we thought. Should we try something new and start something different in addition to? And we did this probably every 2 months. We get together, and also we were both skeptical. We wanted to work for a company that was cool, and I think that's a level of vanity I don't value as much anymore. But at the time, I did, and we were like, could a mattress company be cool? Is this something we'd be proud of and want all our friends to know we're like running a mattress company? Which was the weirdest thing that like any of our friends and family. My mom was literally like, I told her I'm starting a mattress company. She said, couldn't you just stick to software? My dad told her like, he must see something here, like, let's support it. Now she's the biggest fan. But that was definitely a challenge, without a doubt. I think another challenge was we had a lot. Was recruiting, and we started in Silicon Valley. We started in Palo Alto. Try to convince really smart talent, the people that you really need to build your company, to either leave a company they're a co-founder in, or to take off their golden handcuffs, like at a big tech startup that's paying them like super well. And it seemed like everybody we really liked was in one of those two scenarios. So try convincing them to leave to join a mattress company that's been unproven. And so that was really hard. And that was one element. Another was we were having trouble getting people to really support and listen to us and help us in the Valley, because it seemed like if you weren't raising capital, you were a nobody. And that wasn't a metric we wanted and valued at the time, to value our own success by. So we sort of took the Warren Buffett model of moving to Nebraska out of New York, and getting out of the bubble. We didn't move to Nebraska, but we moved to Phoenix, Arizona, which was a place that we saw had an up and coming tech scene. It wasn't like the typical move out of LA, New York, San Francisco, and go to Austin or Vegas. We were looking for something maybe that we could make our own way, since we were already taking a very alternative path to building a company. So Phoenix was one of these places where we saw a lot of tech talent. And I read an article, I want to say in Forbes, that did an analysis of where all the tech talent comes from in Silicon Valley, and Phoenix was in the top 10. So we've got two really big universities here. There's a lot of tech here now. So we saw there was an opportunity for talent. It would be a huge reduction in costs. It's the fifth largest market by population. It's like, didn't know that. And that would also help us test our marketing. There's a lot of benefits. And so that was the way that we addressed the hiring issue of convincing people to join a mattress company. We were able to go to Phoenix, find talent and people that weren't so, and not to say that Silicon Valley is all this way, but there is a mercenary mentality that people join a company. If they like it or don't, they just leave, or they want the equities, invest for a year, get past a cliff and go. We wanted people that were willing to take a bet and be with us in the highs, but also in the lows. And the mentality in Phoenix is more, I would say, balanced with lifestyle. Not that people aren't hardworking, not that they're not really smart, but that people, they really buy into a vision and they want to stick around and see it through. And that's a really unique mentality of people here. And also, there are people that don't want to leave to the valley and they want to stay near their family, but they have the skills. So that was another really amazing benefit that we saw. And we really put our roots down here and love Phoenix. So that was I think, a clever way that we addressed that particular problem.
I love it. So I want to be respectful of your time. I have one more question for you, and that is a lot of people that are tuning into this show, they're young entrepreneurs or they're early in their entrepreneurial journey. What would you say to someone that is at that step of their journey now, having built the company that you've built and perhaps being able to look back at your younger years? What advice would you give that person?
I got two. So first, I would say I'm like a huge fan of focusing on a problem, especially one that you've experienced, because you eating your own dog food, you can experience the fix yourself if it works or not. So I think that that's definitely key, rather than trying and searching. And there's so many options, and I feel like at times it can be paralysis of analysis, or there's so much it's difficult to even see it. But like retrospecting on your own life or your people and things that have been a little bit of a pain or things that could be better is definitely one way to start thinking through, like, okay, what would be an approach I could take? So I think that's one. There's a lot of advice I'd like to give, and I wanted something that could potentially be applied. Another is Dahey and I, Tuft Needle was our first company we built for ourselves. And so, yes, from a product standpoint, product development, even mattress is very similar to software. It's not really that challenging going from software to a mattress. But I would say that we always looked for like a mentor, somebody that had all the answers. Sort of like an analogy, I'm thinking like ascending to the top of a mountain and studying with a kung fu master for like 5 years, and then descending as like a trained master myself, and looking for that older sage to teach us all things. Doesn't exist. Like maybe, but like it's going to be hard to find that person. So what we did was we really relied on friends, family, and even my parents, like for certain subjects, and entrepreneurs that raised capital, entrepreneurs who didn't raise capital. It was hard finding people at times, but what we did was we looked for people when we would ask a question or we didn't know what to do. We would look for somebody who's been there, done that, and not somebody like there are things my father has experienced and is really great at that I needed help on, and he was very helpful for getting for thinking through problems and helping ease our doubts when we were making decisions as an early entrepreneur. And then there were things that he had no experience with, and I needed to talk to like a famous Silicon Valley entrepreneur that I had the opportunity to meet. And for the most part, most people would take a phone call or answer an email and were pretty helpful of an aspiring entrepreneur. It's like a great thing, and it feels good to be able to give back. So we really built sort of this. We had a formal advising group of people. We gave a little bit of equity to, a fair amount, and then we had an informal panel of probably 30 people that we would call on for specific scenarios. And what I found as I developed as an entrepreneur, I called less and less, and there was less and less issues. And you start really relying on the talent you're hiring the skills that have been there, done that. But I don't really think that there's this Jedi master that has all the answers for you. We used Quora a lot, books a lot. We used the internet a lot, and lots of our friends and family and people that we met in Silicon Valley and meeting other entrepreneurs and really focusing on asking the questions to people who've been there and done that. So that's something that I think is also, I wish somebody had given me the confidence that I was on the right path with how I was learning and on my journey. And that was something that was very helpful for us.
Powerful advice from JT. Thank you, man. Thank you for taking time to doing this. Where can people find more about Tuft Needle? Where can people connect with you if they would like? Are you social? I think you're pretty
Well,
offline, right?
yeah, tn.com for tuftandneedle.com or tn.com for the business. But for me personally, I've gotten off social. So I lurk a little bit, but I've worked very hard over the last few years to fully remove myself. But maybe we can share my email, jt@hey.com. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. I answer most of them.
Beautiful, man. Well, thank you, brother.